Greetings, acolytes of the Force and students of this vast and variously expansive galaxy, and welcome back to another installment in our Versus series in our archives and databases. I have been expecting you. Just before we begin, I would like you to note and comment down below whether you are liking the Versus series, a weekly installment I install every single week, depicting two characters, light and maybe dark. Possibly too dark, too light, or maybe just two mercenaries or soldiers of the galaxy, and pitting them against one another on a deserted battlefield. Inform me in the comment section down below if you're enjoying this weekly installment and usurpation, and tell me if you would like me to continue this series, and list below any verses that you desire to see covered here on our databases and installed into our vast archives. With that out of the way, acolytes, let's begin. The two contenders we have for the title of the most powerful Sith Lord today are, in my opinion, the top two most powerful Sith of all time. One of them being the tyrannical and oppressive Sith Emperor of the Old Republic. Obviously inspired by Palpatine, Darth Vitiate, Valkorion, Tenebrae, and the Sith Emperor was a Force user who accomplished what many Force users could not in the time he was 13 years old, in their entire lifetimes. And then the other contender we have for the top spot is the Lord of Hunger, Darth Nihilus. Both of these Sith produced and projected a tyrannical and dark regime across the Star Wars galaxy, imposing their dark will and desire upon the entirety of the galaxy at hand, and nearly succeeded in dominating it, taking it out of the hands of both the Jedi and the Sith at one point in history. Both these Sith had a namesake and were immensely powerful on the dark side of the Force, with their only rival being Darth Sidious, and possibly the preeminent Sith Lord after Darth Sidious, Darth Krayt, also known as Asherad Het. These two Sith Lords both existed about the same era in Star Wars, and while one lived for a lot longer and had incredible feats, as well as the other, they both imposed a will as terrifying, brutal, and savage as each other. So, today, acolytes, and students of the Force and slaves of the dark side, we shall assess who truly prevails as the most powerful Sith Lord in all of galactic history. The immortal Emperor of the Cool, Vitiate, or the Lord of Hunger and the leader of the Sith Triumvirate, Darth Nihilus. Before we begin, I implore you, force drain the subscribe button and use Essence Transfer to hit the notification bell. Using this will alert you to any new Star Wars installments I have produced on this channel. And with that out of the way, acolytes, let's begin. Starting off with arguably the more famous of these two Sith, we have Emperor Vitiate, stating, "It is an official quote from the Old Republic game. My life spans millennia. Legions have risen to test me. My ascendance is inevitable. A day, a year, a millennium, it matters not. I hold the patience of stone and the will of stars. Your striving is insignificant. Let your death be the same." These words were exchanged between the Sith Emperor Vitiate, in my opinion, his weakest point of power, and the hero of Tython, a Jedi renowned to be the greatest of his age, Tenebrae, known to his old Sith Empire as Vitiate, his reconstituted Sith Empire as the Sith Emperor, and his eternal empire as Valkorion, was an ancient, immensely powerful dark side energy of enormous power who manipulated galactic affairs for 1,500 years. Born in the year 5113 BBY as the illegitimate son of the Sith Lord Drummer and a poor father woman, Tenebrae, at the age of just 6 years old, was able to telekinetically use the Force to snap his adoptive stepfather's neck, and then later went on to torture his own mother for months, bathing in her suffering and indulging himself on the dark side energies that emanated from her torture before finally killing her. Vitiate then led a tyrannical regime across his home world of Medidras, the same world he would one day rule and rename to Nethema. Vitiate, by the age of 13, had held public executions, bolstering his power on the dark side and augmenting his immense dark side persona by feeding and gorging himself on the suffering of others. Vitiate, at the age of 13, met with Lord Drummer his biological father, and then proceeded to strip the man of his sanity, and then strip him of the Force entirely. He then encased his spirit within the Sith citadel for a millennia of torment, where Vitiate would continue to sustain himself on his father's immense power. Even as a child, the Sith Emperor possessed immense and nigh unparalleled strength in the Force. His abilities began to manifest themselves at the age of 6. As his powers grew, Tenebrae continued to gorge and sustain himself on the fear and suffering of those he tortured in drawn-out public executions. When he confronted his real father, he was able to effortlessly beat him. Tenebrae's power at the age of 13 was great enough that he ventured to the Sith holy world of Droman Cast, the location of the Sith Empire and its capital, and was acknowledged by Marka Ragnos as possibly being, at the time, still inferior, but a rival to him. This means that at the age of 13, his Force powers and proficiency in the dark side was greater than nearly any Sith of all time. He granted him the title of Lord Vitiate. Vitiate soon garnered and gained a reputation as a scholar, spending much of the next century studying the in-depth secrets of the dark side and Sith sorcery and immense lore, becoming one of the most powerful practitioners of both Sith magic and alchemy throughout history, devising complex rituals to warp reality and life itself. Another one of Vitiate's specialties was in the domination of his opponents' minds, being more skilled in this ability than, in my opinion, any other Sith Lord in all of history, even Emperor Palpatine from the Dark Empire comic series. Vitiate most notably employed this strategy when he dominated the will and mind of Darth Revan and Darth Maul, two of the most powerful Jedi and later Sith that we know today. Darth Revan was no mere acolyte either, being able to unify both sides of the Force and wield it in union. Darth Revan was considered the predecessor as the chosen one to Anakin Skywalker. He then used their combined might to perform the most complex ritual of Sith magic ever performed, gorging himself on the power of 8,000 fellow Sith and all life on Thema, ripping the Force from the entire planet and absorbing the combined life force of every living thing on the surface besides himself. Lord Scourge, the first Emperor's hand, suspected the Emperor had not only absorbed the lives of those who had died in that ritual, but was in fact feeding off their spirits to sustain his own body throughout the centuries that followed, and his spirit. This feat can only be comparable to that of Darth Nihilus, who was effortlessly able to drain planets of their entire life, but more on that later. As Emperor, he spent much of his rule experimenting and delving even further within dark-side lore, discovering and immersing himself in many lost techniques and increasing his immense and unmatched power even more. While his body was harmed by the ravaging effects of the dark side, consuming his body and physical form over time, the technique of essence transference, created by the Darth and Dedu, a very powerful Sith, allowed him to transfer and move his consciousness between vessels, which had been made immortal as a result of the ritual on Thema, between bodies, and sustain his life indefinitely by combining various Force techniques. The Emperor was also able to imbue and embed portions of his own consciousness into infants, transforming those children of the Emperor into extensions of his own will and mind. Vitiate also had the ability to grant and bestow upon non-Force sensitives Force sensitivity. As shown, when he imbued portions of his consciousness into infants, he was able to bypass their Force sensitivity and make them the ultimate covert operatives, and further possess them like puppets. The Emperor's rituals conducted on his capital world of Droman Cast during his tenure as the Sith Emperor warped the planet's very atmosphere, creating perpetual vast lightning storms of incredible danger. He became vastly skilled in telekinesis and defensive techniques. He could conjure immensely powerful Force barriers, even able to block the Hero of Titan's lightsaber strikes, T3M4's flamethrower, Revan's personal droid, and even stronger lightsaber blows from his son Arkin, and could conjure protection bubbles to protect himself from oncoming Force attacks and cocoon him from flamethrowers. His telekinetic power was so great that he could effortlessly perform great telekinetic feats without utilising the common need for hand gestures, as commonly needed and required with Force wielders. He was able, in the Revan novel, to send the extremely powerful Revan, at his peak of power, flying through the air. with barely an effort, and he effortlessly disintegrated T3M4 with just a mere thought, like he had done with his stepfather many years prior by blasting the asteroid into shrapnel. The Emperor was also extremely proficient in the use of Force Lightning, utilising it in the form of cackling and conniving bolts of energy, and even being proficient enough to use single-handedly summon Force Storms, strong enough to overwhelm Revan's immense tutor minutes and severely injure him. Before this, Revan had overwhelmed Darth Nihilus, a very powerful Dark Council member, and Sith Lady with tutor minutes, and launched her Force Lightning back at her. However, Lord Scourge has stated that despite Revan's attempts to harness Vitiate's Force Lightning with tutor minutes, he was infinitely more powerful than Darth Nihilus had ever been. The Emperor was also able to summon Sith magic, which enabled him to create physical doppelgangers and duplications of himself to overwhelm the hero of Tython in lightsaber combat. When necessary, the Emperor would utilise his crimson-bladed lightsaber in combat, and displayed adequate proficiency and a mercenary in with it, despite being so powerful that he rarely used it. During his time as the Eternal Empire Valkorian, he was able to effortlessly dominate and get rid of his son Arcan, an immensely powerful being. He was able to dominate the will and power of Arcan, Valen, and the Outlander, two of the most powerful Star Wars characters to ever live. Valen and the Outlander are commonly regarded as two of the most powerful characters in all of Star Wars lore. He was able to use a barrage of Force Lightning, more akin to a Force Storm than anything else, in order to instantly kill Darth Maul. Darth Maul was the longest reigning Dark Council member in all of Star Wars, and commonly regarded as, alongside Darth Malgus, the most powerful Dark Council member, with his feats and powers being comparable, however slightly lessened, to that of Darth Malgus, an exceptionally powerful Sith Lord and my favourite character and Sith in all of Star Wars. Vitiate's powers were so great that in his Echoes of Oblivion during his final death, it took the combined might of all the beings he had wronged over the past. Revan, Mitra Surik, Lord Scourge, the Outlander, the hero of Tython, joined together with the Outlander and the Grand Master Satil Shan, a descendant of Revan and Bastila Shan, within Shan's mindscape to defeat him once and for all. And even then, he still might be roaming around the galaxy. During his final death, he was able to utilise cackling bolts of red Force Lightning and a red wave that would shown to have overpowered all the beings he had ever wronged instantly, seemingly without effort. He was also able to reanimate the corpse of Vitiate and the corpse of Valkorian, as well as his original Sith pureblood body. Tenebrae has stationed and cemented himself in history as one of the most powerful Sith Lords to ever live, with his dark side mastery eclipsing that of even Nihilus, Sidious, and Crave, his Force Lightning ability capable of turning beings to ash, and against Revan, despite him using tutor minutes, was severely able to melt his mask, his signature item, to his face and induce the common scars that make Revan so iconic. So how does this compare to the planet killer of Darth Nihilus? Technically, he wasn't really a Sith Lord. Nonetheless, it is irrelevant, as he was still skilled in the dark side of the Force beyond possibly even Vitiate. As we know, he was famous for his Force Drain ability that made him the stuff of legends, which is capable of easily wiping out and scourging the life of an entire planet. That's a ridiculously impressive feat, as he was able to replicate this multiple times. Furthermore, he did this with great ease, so Nihilus is likely on a multi-planetary level, being able to drain the life of multiple planets during his tenure as a Sith Lord. It was stated by Visas Ma and Tobin that the extent of his power could not be put into words, and to him you were dust motes in a storm, a grain upon the beach, as insignificant as a body that orbit the battle and graveyard of Malachor. Trained to perfection by Darth Traya alongside Darth Sion. During combat, Nihilus fought an aggressive one-handed style using his lightsaber. However, his proficiency and adequacy with this blade was most likely on the term and tenure with Vitiate, being comparable in lightsaber combat. He had the experience and learned some of the greatest Sith techniques, teachings, and ways in all of Star Wars, but such practices took the form of dependence. They would make him stronger and satiate his immense Force-wounded hunger, but only for a certain time, and he would have had to feed upon Force energy and the life energy of beings and planets to replenish his immense strength. For this reason, Force sensitives and worlds rich in the Force would draw him like a moth to a flame. His reach in the Force eventually extended to the point where he could feel all Force users throughout the galaxy to find planets steeped in the Force. This allowed him to sustain and satiate his immense dark side hunger and power as it continued to augment. He could feel Force users throughout the galaxy that he would cleanse entirely, using Force drain that made him the stuff of legends to kill everything who was touched by the Force in that vicinity. Prolonged use of this power made him a threat to all life in the galaxy, as Darth Traya envisioned Nihilus being able to drain entire galaxies of the Force at will. As his craving and hunger grew more intense with each and every feeding, Darth Nihilus' hunger controlled him and not the other way around. The Sith Lord would instinctively slave away and feed upon those around him. His very words could kill and cause agony to the beings around him. Nihilus' very speech caused pain and death to all who heard it, and those who served upon him became utter slaves in time, zombies and the slaves of Nihilus. His ability was somewhat similar to Traya's influence upon others. The reconvened Jedi Council in the Jedi Enclave on Dantooine inferred that the Sith had somehow learned the ability to feed on the Force from her, where it was actually his Force wound persona and ability that allowed him to use this ability. Darth Nihilus was single-handedly, along with Darth Sign, brought about the first Great Jedi Purge, an event that would later be replicated by Emperor Palpatine and Darth Vader during the events of the Revenge of the Sith with Order 66. Darth Nihilus went to the world of Qatar and used the Force to drain all the life essence from it, seemingly killing all but 2 of the Jedi in the galaxy and maybe some spares that we do not know about that were in exile. This is a tremendous feat, as this is possibly the greatest Jedi killer aside from Darth Vader we're talking about, and Darth Nihilus was able to kill 100 Jedi in the space of seconds, draining their life essence to replenish his strength and make it even more unquestionably and unimaginably powerful. Darth Nihilus was adept in many aspects of the dark ways and teachings of the Force. He used his own creation, a dark variant of the Force Sever ability, to betray his master Darth Traya alongside Darth Sion. Sever Force was a non-lethal Force power often employed by the Jedi against other Force-wielding foes that allowed them to disrupt their opponent's connection to the Force. However, the corrupt way that Nihilus employed it, he was able to literally kill the midichlorians coursing through Traya's veins, rendering her completely immune to the Force at all, and completely away from its sensitivity. He was able to use telekinesis to such a degree he could use the Force to lift starships, as he did on his homeworld of Ravacor 5 with the Ravager, his flagship. He tore it from the mass shadows that orbited and surrounded the planet, and kept it together, even though it had suffered extensive structural and external damage. This is an incredible feat that is only comparable, according to my knowledge, to Grandmaster Yoda, as during the Clone Wars, Grandmaster Yoda was able to use the Force to redirect 2 separatist gunships into one another. Not to show the Grandmaster short though, he did make one of the droid gunships pivot one way using clone troopers, thus making it change direction. Darth Nihilus was also proficient in Darth Rage, Farsight, Force Lightning. Force Lightning was one of his main abilities, with Force Lightning being possibly the staple of the dark side itself. Darth Nihilus was capable of using a red variation of Force Lightning that had the ability to instantly disintegrate and vaporize enemies, and prolonged exposure, if not turned up to its most lethal variation, could strip someone of their Force permanently. He even was able to escape death through the Force by containing and sustaining his consciousness in his armor, an ability that Darth craved. The preeminent Sith Lord and the last great Sith of the Legends timeline would acquire of Nihilus' holocron millennia later. He was also proficient in Force Resistance, Force Screen, the same ability utilized by Emperor Palpatine to strike fear into the hearts of Say Tin, Aegon Kola, Kit Fisto, and Mace Windu during the battle in the Chancellor's office, Force Plague, a modified version of Force Slow that allowed Darth Nihilus to slow down the mind and attacks of his opponents, and used telekinesis and Force Lightning to kill them, as well as his lightsaber, and Force Whirlwind. Force Whirlwind was an ability that allowed Nihilus to levitate multiple opponents with the Force and then blast them aside with telekinesis, often killing them, among others, such as a dark variation of Force Healing called Dark Healing. The Sith were most likely and most notably not able to use healing. Darth Bane, the Sith Ari, and the creator and founder of the Rule of Two, specifically noted he did not utilize and prolong the use and pursue the usage of Force Healing, as he believes that Force using along with the dark side was a lost cause, and that any form of healing was rejecting the Sith's way for utter power, as pain made the dark side stronger. However, both Nihilus and Sion both found ways around this technique. His knowledge also extended to the banks of Sith alchemy. During the Second Battle of Onderon, Nihilus's own sect of followers used techniques that could bend tame beasts to their will. Nihilus could increase and augment the strength of his Force powers he used greatly. If he wished, he was capable of reaching through the Force at a range as far as the star system to search for more beings. Well, with all the facts laid out and everything on the table, who truly is the most powerful Sith of all time? Now, this is the hardest versus I have had to currently do, as both Vitiate and Darth Nihilus are pure monsters with an unrivaled power in the dark side of the Force, surpassing even Sidious, Darth Krayt, Exar Kun, Tula Kord, and Darth Malgus, some of the most notable Sith Lords to revolutionize the Order, and Darth Bane, the founder of the Rule of Two. Anyway, in conclusion, I conclude that the most powerful Sith Lord of all time is Darth Nihilus. Darth Nihilus' trademark ability over Force Drain was simply too impressive to ignore. Darth Nihilus, upon binding his spirit to his armor, was essentially unkillable and could sustain his life on all the beings that he had ever killed. He was able to bind his spirit to his armor using the dark side, could delve into Sith alchemy, used the red Force Lightning, the most powerful version of Force Lightning due to its common association with the Son of Mortis, the living embodiment of the dark side. And not even Palpatine, Vitiate, or Malgus could use this ability, not even the exceptionally powerful Darth Krayt. Well, my friends, I hope that you understand why Darth Nihilus is the most powerful Sith of all time. However, I would like to set the record straight and state that this does not mean that I believe that Nihilus would beat Vitiate every time, as the only way, in my opinion, Vitiate could best the Lord of Hunger is through his mind-dominating powers, being able to dominate Nihilus's mind. So in conclusion, I paint this duel playing out like this. Vitiate and Nihilus meet on the devastated Sith holy world of Korriban. Vitiate immediately uses Force Lightning, with Darth Nihilus dodges it with ease. They then drew out their Crimson Blades and start with a barrage of lightsaber strikes. Upon realizing that neither has the edge, due to their least adequate proficiency with the blade, they move on to Force powers. Vitiate unleashes more Force Lightning, with Nihilus bats away with his lightsaber. Nihilus then attempts to use Force Plague to slow down Vitiate. Vitiate's attacks begin to stagger, and seeing that Nihilus is about to get the upper hand, he begins to transfer his essence when Nihilus truly takes the victory. Nihilus then employs Force Drain, his namesake, and upon Vitiate attempting to override his consciousness using his mind-dominating powers, Nihilus drains his spirit and becomes an all-powerful dark entity. This is truly how I believe a battle between these two nigh-omnipotent Sith would play off. And I truly believe that my fact stands to reason. Anyway, it is entirely in the eye of the beholder. Please feel free to share your opinions in the comment section down below on who you believe could truly defeat in a brawl, Darth Nihilus or Darth Vitiate. With that out of the way, acolytes, I'll see you in a galaxy far, far away, and I hope you are not on the opposing side of Darth Nihilus's horrifying Force Drain.